wish to acknowledge that Canada is on Turtle Island, which is a vast territory of traditional landscapes of many Indigenous peoples who over time have occupied and made this land their home from time immemorial. The original peoples who began their journey taking those early footsteps in our creation stories across this land, some came from the stars and others came from the sky, and there were those who came from underground. But there's something important that they all share, and that is their stories of arrival to this land we call home on Turtle Island. Ndinaway Magani Duck, which means all my relations, which means we are all related. Hello, I'm Steve McEwen, producer for Rogers TV. Over the past year or so, Rogers TV and OMNI Television have teamed up to produce and to bring to the airwaves what we call Indigenous interstitials. Now, the goal of these interstitials is to foster a better respect and understanding of the Indigenous history and traditions amongst all Canadians. Given June as National Indigenous History Month, we couldn't think of a better time to present to you these segments for your viewing pleasure. To introduce you to these vignettes and to talk a little bit about his own Indigenous history and culture is artist, activist, ancestral knowledge keeper, and historian Philip Cote.
Ani, bonjour, Tanzi, Sega, welcome everyone. My name is Phil Cote. That's what everybody knows me by, but my real name is Nojamoan Muskogee Ashk. And I'm Shawnee, Lakota, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Algonquin, and Mohawk. And I'm a sweat lodge leader, pipe carrier, and a young spiritual elder. And we're here today to talk about National Indigenous History Month. And one of the things that strikes me most importantly about this month is the fact that Indigenous people are going to be celebrated across this country. For a long time, Indigenous people have been marginalized, but now things have turned around, and we began to look at the many things that Indigenous people offer. And I'm hoping this month is going to be the one that people will get inspired by seeing and all the things that people are sharing across the country. Here's our first interstitial, Kim Wheatley, local wisdom keeper and grandmother. Oh-ho.
The first day of National Indigenous Peoples Day was on June 21st, 1996.
We celebrate the unique heritage, languages, cultural practices, spiritual beliefs, and vast history of connection to the lands now called Kanata or Canada. The contributions and stewardship that are the foundations of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit ways of life are deep, powerful, and meaningful. We have our own name for this great country, Turtle Island. We've always been here honoring all creation with our songs, stories, and deep relationships to Earth Mother. This day is a day of celebration, and as I sing the songs of our people, I encourage all Canadians to pause and reflect on the enormous, diverse contributions of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We are here, have been for time immemorial, and will continue to be here for generations to come.
And here with me today is Kim Wheatley. Ani, bonjour, Kim. How are you today?
Ani, bonjour. I am well. So happy to be here.
Excellent. How do you feel about the fact that there's a special day and month dedicated to Indigenous celebration of history?
So, you know, having a special month and day connected to our history here in this country as sovereign nations is extremely important. And I'm so happy that it exists. It should have existed long ago, but, you know, it's here now. And in that process, I think we've had a great opportunity to celebrate and recognize who we are historically, but also in a contemporary sense, because we're still here.
Excellent. That's a great point. Is there more that can be done in this area?
I think there's always room for improvement. And I mean, having a day in a month is one thing, but what about having something every single month? I mean, we are sovereign nations in this country, and our sovereignty oftentimes isn't recognized. I'd like to see more efforts towards supporting our distinct status in this country.
What would you like to see for the future generations as we move forward, especially for the children?
Oh, Phil, I would love to see so many things, but one of the things I'd really look forward to is a visual embracing of the diversity of who we are. And also, showing the multi-ages of who we are. There's a lot of focus on elders and dancers and singers, but there are youth who do so many other things, including the arts in all of its flavors that it comes out, and also in all the activities. I mean, we're in every role in life that you can think of today, and we don't hear about that. We don't get to celebrate that. We don't get to recognize that. And there aren't always mainstream platforms to talk about those things or show that, we're here in this contemporary world, really doing everything in all walks of life that everybody else does.
Oh, fantastic. Those are the best answers. And I agree with you totally on those.
Yeah. So let's see what we can do moving forward. Let's see if we see those changes begin to manifest. It's a real honor to be here today. And I'm so, so happy that this is happening. It was my honor to be able to do that interstitial. And I look forward to contributing in more meaningful ways as we move forward together.
Beautiful. I look forward to seeing more of your work across our city and our province and our country. Miigwech to you.
Oh, miigwech. Can't wait for our paths to cross again. Be well.
I want to talk about the thousands of children that were taken over the years into residential school and the effects that it had on our community. And for me personally, I wasn't a victim of residential schools, but it's something that affects me deeply because I understand the loss of culture and language, because I experienced these things myself, not through that system, but I understand what these young people are going through, or in many cases, people that are my age who are still dealing with the effects of not having a sense of identity. But for myself, I was very lucky to get involved with our cultural activities, and since I was a young man, I've been practicing our culture over the years. And when I first started doing this, I didn't realize how important that would be, especially now that I'm older and I've been recognized as a young spiritual elder. I realized that these things were vital in the survival of our communities to be healthy and successful. And the next interstitial is Phyllis Webstad. I just wanted to say a few things about Orange Shirt Day with regard to the color that is one of those 7 colors of the 7 grandfathers.
Her name is Phyllis Webstead, and she is a survivor from a dark period in Canadian history. Beginning in the 1830s, Indigenous children were taken from their families. They were sent away to residential schools and forced to abandon their traditions, languages, and culture. Phyllis remembers her first day at St. Joseph's Mission Residential School. The year was 1973. She was 6 years old, and she was wearing a new orange shirt, which was purchased by her grandmother. Arriving at the school, she was stripped of her clothes. She never wore that shirt again. To quote Phyllis, "My feelings didn't matter. No one cared, and I felt like I was worth nothing." The last residential school closed in 1996. Phyllis will never forget, nor should we. In 2013, Phyllis started the nationally commemorated Orange Shirt Day. On September 30th, wear something orange.
Ani bonjour, Phyllis Webstad. Thank you for joining us here today. What kind of memories and feelings does the Orange Shirt story still evoke in you?
As many times as I've told that story, I still get emotional when I do tell the story. Feelings of not mattering, and that's where Every Child Matters comes from, that I, no matter how much we cried, that the nuns and the people that were supposed to look after us didn't really care much about our feelings or if we were hungry or sad or lonely. So it's just those memories keep flood back whenever I tell that story.
Why is it important people know this story?
I've been doing presentations across Canada and around here in BC, bringing awareness and conversation about all aspects of residential schools. And this is Canadian history. This is not just Indigenous history. So there's no longer an excuse for anyone to not know this history.
This is a tough question, but how do you feel about the recent discovery of the 215 Indigenous school children's remains found at a BC residential school?
I am here in Shawetmuk-Uluk in Williams Lake. The Kamloops School is one of two schools in Shawetmuk territory. And when I heard about it, I was in shock, even though we knew their stories of where the children were. And what's shocking is how many that they found. On the NCTR website, there's 50 they have documented. So that leaves over 160 that still need to be found and put names to and to find those families. So I'm in crisis. I feel like I'm in crisis. I've had 4.5 hours of sleep last night, and I just want to get a message to survivors and their families to take care of yourselves and to be easy on each other and to be kind to each other and to love one another during this time.
Is there still more work to be done?
Yes, there's a map on the NCTR website and circulating on social media. There's 140 residential schools across Canada. This at Kamloops, that's one of those. And many do have mass burial sites as well, and as does ours in our area. So we're about to undergo that work in the next little while as well. So there's a lot of work to do yet.
What can Canadians do to support awareness of Indigenous issues?
As one of my friends put it, the truth has been ignited. So if you can imagine this being the truth and this being a cigarette lighter, the truth has been set on fire right now. And so with that, because everybody has children in their family, everybody was a child at one time. So there's I have a 5-year-old grandson, and to think of him laying somewhere in a grave unmarked, that just people can associate that if it was their own family, how would they feel?
It's such a terrible tragedy, and it's one that's now beginning to have much more exposure and a real presence. And it's important that all Canadians begin to grieve for this huge historic tragedy that has unfolded over the last 150 years. Mm-hmm. I want to thank you for your words and courage for coming and sharing your thoughts with us here today. Miigwech, Phyllis. Most people don't know about the 60s scoop and how tragic it was for a lot of Indigenous families and the children that experienced those hard times in those institutions. Me personally, I've experienced that myself as I was one of those 60 scoops individuals. But my mother was really smart, and she decided not to keep us in there, and she took us out of the foster care 2 days before we were to be permanent residences in the CAS. And this is a hard thing to talk about because a lot of people don't understand when they see an Indigenous person down the street, if they're down and out, if they're not feeling okay, or if they seem angry about things. And that's part of the reason is that a lot of Indigenous people, when going through the system, don't have a sense of identity. They don't know really who they are, and they can't even tell you who they really are. Here's another survivor story with Matthew Rutledge.
My name is Matthew Rutledge. I'm a 60 scoop survivor, born in Red Lake. Was adopted from there to Toronto at the age of 4. A lot of our brothers and sisters, family members got separated from each other. That was the government's goal, to break that connection from brothers and sisters. Basically taking the Indian out of the child. Right now, they're still trying to find themselves. Originally, my birth name is Harvey Halverson. In my high school days, teens, I was trying to fit into society. I knew I was First Nations, but I didn't know who I was inside. I think later in life, I started that journey. I am proud, and it's not my man, of who I am now. I love life, who I am.
Ani, bonjour, Matthew Rutledge, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for letting me be part of it.
It's an honor. How do you feel about what happened to you as a survivor of the 60s scoop?
Trying to fit in society, growing up in Toronto with all the different minorities. And it was pretty hard, definitely going through high school, being that teenager.
And how important was it to get your identity back?
There was something inside of me wondering and guessing who I was, definitely looking at, I knew my color was different than anybody's, my hair, and then trying to find out where do I fit in? I think my connection, what was really got to me was that drum. I heard that drum in Ottawa years and years ago, and I realized I got closer, and that was a power. That connected me, that drum, and then learning the teachings behind that drum.
How do you feel about the recent discovery of the 215 Indigenous school children's remains found at the BC residential school?
I'm not surprised. I'm telling you right now, there's a lot more that the deep government Canada did to our people, to all the residential schools through Ontario. I hear it from elders.
What kind of future do you see for Indigenous peoples?
Hopefully, with this news that came out on the weekend, hopefully it's going to be a change, more understanding with this.
Miigwech for being here with us today, Matthew. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Yeah, Chimiigwech, Bamapi.
The late Gord Downie from Tragically Hip started the Gord Downie Cheney Wanjak Fund, which is an organization put together to recognize the tragedy and the struggles of residential school survivors. And Cheney Wanjak was a really important figure. Not that he was any more special or any different than all of the other residential school victims, but he was one that was selected because his story was so tragic. And to further tell this story, here's Harriet Visitor, Cheney Wanjak's niece.
My Uncle Cheney was one of over 150,000 Indigenous children that were taken to residential schools between the 1800s and 1996. My uncle ran away from school, wanting to get home to his mom and dad, and sadly he didn't make it and died of exposure. When Gord Downie found out about my late Uncle Cheney's story, he wrote Secret Path, a series of poems that became an album, then a graphic novel, a documentary, and a concert. Gord met my family, and together we formed the Gord Downie and Cheney Wanjak Fund. Together we are sharing Secret Path and other reconciliation resources with legacy schools, setting up legacy spaces across Canada, and hosting events like Secret Path Week to inspire all Canadians to engage in reconciliation. Before he left us, Gord asked us all to do something.
You're gonna figure it out.
Will you join us? Together we can make Canada a better place.
Ani, bonjour, Harriet. Thank you for joining us here today. I hope you're well. My first question is, how do you feel about Cheney Wanjak's story and its relevance today, even though it happened a long time ago?
My uncle's story, although his death has been over 50 plus years, his story is still so relevant today. I just have to look at what's currently happened in Kamloops, BC at the residential school there, and the finding of those 215 children's bodies to understand that it's still relevant today. My uncle's story is not just his story, but it's the story of 150,000 Indigenous children who went to school. That's 300,000 set of parents and 600,000 set of grandparents. And the enormity, the impact that it's had on our families and communities is enormous. We're going to hear more because more of the truth is going to be revealed. Whether it's this way by it being found or by people sharing their stories. So I knew that in having my uncle's stories shared, that as a family, we always wanted others to share their stories as well.
Myself, I would like to know a little bit more about what you think people should know about your Uncle Cheney.
What I'd like them to know about my Uncle Cheney is that he was loved. He meant something to our family, and that he was missed, and that now he's not forgotten. That he was he was a sibling to my mom and her sisters, and he was a son to my grandparents. And for myself, he's the uncle that I never had the opportunity to meet. And had I the opportunity to meet him, I know he'd be amazing if he's anything like my mom and her sisters.
Thank you for joining us here today. And it's important that the country knows about this story and knows about the history of residential schools. And for most people that know about Cheney Wendick, I'm sure everybody agrees that his life is a legacy of sorts, and he'll be recognized as a hero. And his words and his actions, to try and get home that day is something that many children in residential schools yearn to do, but they never did. So
I truly believe that the minute my uncle left the residential school, he was home.
Beautiful. Yeah. Big Witch, thank you for sharing this.
Thank you.
I have a few things to say about our Indigenous artists as not only creating beautiful works of art, but also songs and stories. And for me as a visual artist, I recognize that how important it was to see a reflection of myself and my culture across the city of Toronto. And the first time I saw any artist doing this kind of work, it was Norval Morrisseau. Norval Morrisseau's work became internationally famed, and it inspired me as an artist to pass on that storytelling ability in the images that I produce myself, that most Torontonians recognize across the city here today. Here's the next interstitial, Lacey Hill, who's not only influenced by her culture, but her family as well.
I'm a singer-songwriter from Six Nations, and I've been writing songs about my experience, and with that being said, it's helped me hold hope in my heart in following my dreams and being resilient to everyday Indigenous battles.
Competition between spirit, earth, and wind, let me tell you now.
This song in particular, The Shiner, is a special song that I wrote for my grandfather. He was a snow snake maker, and that is a Haudenosaunee winter sport. It's my job to educate and to share, and the music allows me to do that.
He'll be shining snow snakes and mudcats to the end of his days.
Ani, bonjour, Lacey, how are you?
I'm good, Sega. Sega from Six Nations.
Oh, fantastic. Well, from an artist's perspective, how does it make you feel to be the conduit for creating awareness and sharing knowledge regarding Indigenous culture?
I believe that we're amazing humans, And we have the ability to connect in so many different ways, and being open to messages and being open to the universe providing these amazing opportunities for you to say yes. Yes, I'm there.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Now, do you feel the message is getting through? And I guess I mean that for not just for your audience, but for our community.
I'm getting interviewed by Rogers TV. It's hitting somebody's heartstrings out there. So I must be doing something right, because I'm so honored and blessed to be here with you.
What more do you think can be done?
I want to see, Indigenous people mainstream. I want to see in every genre. You know what I mean? Like, I want that to happen. And so there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of investing in Indigenous people needs to be done. And this is bringing awareness, is connecting people to allow that to happen. So I'm very excited for the future, and there's lots of work to be done.
Wow, I'm looking forward to the future just with the words you said. What are your plans for the future musically as far as knowledge sharing of Indigenous issues?
I have an album coming out soon, and I've been working on that throughout the year. The past few years, but really focusing on, with the time that I have, being at home and in a pandemic, we still have issues, and we're still fighting for our land, and we're still fighting for our Indigenous missing women and children, and fighting through all the trauma that the residential schools have put us through and still put us through. So there's so much to be done.
What does the future for Indigenous people look like to you?
I see our people striving in all the musical genres, and not just in music, but in industry, like in politics. And we are change makers. We're gonna make that change because we're here for a reason.
Thank you, Lacey. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and thoughts. And we wish you the best in your future endeavors. And we look forward to seeing more of your work in the future. Miigwech. Bye-bye.
Goa, Philip, thank you so much.
National Indigenous History Month is important, not only because we're going to be telling these stories of history. Some of the history is good, some of the history is bad, but it's also an important solstice time for Indigenous people when we begin to celebrate the bounty of the earth. And I like to think about this show in that way, that even though we may be talking about some of these tragic moments, there's a lot of wisdom that's going to come from sharing these stories. And I hope you like the stories that we shared here today. Nindenwe Maganidak, which means all my relations, which means we are all related. Here's Lacey Hill.
A friendly game of skill and teases. Sometimes it's cold, sometimes it freezes. The shiner chillaxes diamond marwood, while the others throw as far as they could. I know we need these wintry days to carry out a hut in the Shawnee ways. Whoa, whoa, yeah. The furthest distance takes the wind.